Hello, my name is Steve Stafford. I got a Generations Church here. I've gone here for about 6.5 or 7 years. I've lived in Granbury for about 9 years. I work at the hospital here in town as a radiology tech. And I want to give my testimony of the happenings over the last several months. About 2 or 3 years ago, I started getting bronchitis about twice a year. And I would cough and cough my head off. But this year, it just took its vengeance. We had just got back from a vacation up in the Rocky Mountains, and I thought maybe the elevation change had probably escalated my problems. But anyway, we got home October 14th, and I got the bronchitis. Okay, well, to me, bronchitis is pretty normal, but yet still miserable. But over the course of the next couple of weeks, I had gone to the emergency room, and they diagnosed my bronchitis as part of it might be a pneumonia thing. Then I went to my doctor, and he just gave me a regular exam, said everything was fine, just gave me medicines to try to control my bronchitis. A couple of weeks later, I was up at my office, and my back started hurting very, very badly. And so I went down and talked to the nurse at my pulmonologist office, and she advised me to go to the emergency room. I went home, and my wife agreed, so we went to the emergency room, and they gave me some medicines and some breathing treatments while I was there, and sent me home. But I don't think it really helped a whole lot. A little bit later, I went back to see my doctor, a follow-up visit, and he decided he wanted to do a CT scan, or a CAT scan as some people call them. And so I went to the hospital as soon as I left the office, and I had the CAT scan. And so went home and went to work the very next day, and pulmonologist actually came up to my office to tell me that I had a golf ball sized lesion in my right upper part of my chest, or my lung. And he said he wanted to run some more tests. So he set me up for a bronchoscope. And at this particular time, I wasn't really sure I wanted to share this with anyone. I wanted to get the results first. And after talking to my wife and her wife about that, Ellen, we decided, well, we just need prayer. And so we didn't know of any other better way to spread it out rather than to call people. And also we used the social media, and we broadcast that I had this mass, and we didn't know if it was a cancer or anything else. But I was given the indication that it probably might be a cancer. So the pulmonologist gave me several options, one of which was just to go have it cut out. And then he wanted to do other tests or whatever. But he said that the next way to try to find out something was to do another biopsy with the use of a CAT scan machine to figure out where the mass was. Okay, so over the course of having the bronchoscope and also the CAT scan biopsy, they determined that there was no cancer cells. And I told everyone's thinking the power of prayer, it's working. A couple of weeks later, November the 30th, I got off at noon at my place of employment, and I went home. We visited with some relatives for a while, and I still have my bronchitis. I'm coughing my head off. And I was talking to my relatives and trying to hold back my cough as much as I possibly could. And of course, when you do that, and then by the time you do start coughing, it comes back with a vengeance. And so when my family left, I started feeling very bad. My temperature shot up to about 103. Ellen, my wife, said, "You're going to the hospital." And I wasn't strong enough or feeling well enough to argue with her, so she took me to the hospital. Okay, so this is November the 30th. We went to the hospital. I went to the emergency room. They did another CAT scan. They did other chest x-rays, and then they determined that I was going to have to be admitted to the hospital. At this time, they tell me the hospital's full, so I have to stay in the emergency room for 24 hours before I could get a room. So they put me in a room, and we're continuing trying to tell everyone, especially our church members, that I'm at the hospital and they're treating me the best they could, so they're giving me steroids and antibiotics to try to treat me. I'm not getting any better, so they decide to go ahead and send me to another hospital over in Burleson, Texas. I get to that hospital and they just start giving me more steroids, more antibiotics. I'm seeing about a dozen doctors, and the surgeon that my pulmonologist originally was referring me to came in and talked to me, and he says, well, I don't believe that the mass that you have is cancerous, but if it is, we want to wait and hold up and see if it is indeed an infection. All during this time, I'm getting visits from my friends, my family, and several of the church people here from generations. So I didn't get to go to church for several weeks, but church came to me, and through the power of prayer kept me going. Got very good counsel from Pastor Yvette, and Pastor Allen was there, and Randy Raymond Ellis come to minister to me. Greg Harrell has been wonderful. Carl Caspic come to see me, and I got prayer every time they came in. During the course that I was there, I saw an infectious disease doctor, and she really felt that it was an infection as well. So she put me on high doses of antibiotics. And the surgeon come in, and he was willing to just wait and see what happened. During the course that I was there, I saw another pulmonologist. I was still coughing my head off, and he said, if you don't quit coughing, you're going to develop a collapse of your lung. Well, that's exactly what happened. So my right lung collapsed, and when the surgeon came back to see me again, the thoracic surgeon, he said he was going to have to put tubes into my lungs to reinflate them. Over the course of inflating my lungs in surgery with the tubes, he could not get a scope in, so he had to do a surgical procedure called a thoracotomy, which is basically cutting into my lungs, freeing up some adhesions, and scraping some gunk out, which is what he did. Then I go back to my hospital room. I have the tubes in. They keep the tubes in for 2 or 3 days, and then they take them out. And whenever I see the infectious disease doctor again, she's the one that's calling the shots on when I can go home. Okay, after 2 or 3 days of having the tubes in, I did a chest x-ray, then I did another CAT scan, and my lungs were reinflated. Okay, I still have the lesion or the mass in the top of my lungs, which is still about the same size of a golf ball. So I'm kind of discouraged about that. But she said that she, meaning the infectious disease doctor, still felt like I was still on the right track. So I went home after being in the hospital for 23 days. All the doctors felt like I was doing well. I was in pain from the tubes being put in my lungs, because in the process of doing it, he said he had to spread some ribs, but in the process he broke a couple of ribs. So that's where I'm sore now, and that's where I was real sore getting out of the hospital. So it took a while to kind of recover from that. I had to be helped into bed and helped in the chair and all this business. But over the course of time, things started getting better. I went back for another CAT scan, and at this point, with that new CAT scan, my mass had reduced from the size of a golf ball to the size of a marble. Okay, so power of prayer. I'm still believing God's reducing this down, a little at a time, but He's reducing it down. And then I go back to the infectious disease doctor, and she sees the results on the new CAT scan with the lesion reducing down, and she says, "Okay, you're done with the antibiotics. The mass is reducing down. I do believe that everything's working with the antibiotics." Well, it might be the medicine, might be the doctors, but I believe if it wasn't for God having His hand in there, that it wouldn't be reducing down the way it is. Okay, so over the course of the next week or couple of weeks, I'm supposed to go see the surgeon that actually did my surgery again, and he wanted a chest x-ray before I came. So I went to the hospital last Friday, and they took a chest x-ray, and I asked him if I could look at it, and I looked at it. I did not see any evidence of the mass at all. It looked like a normal chest to me. So of course, I'm saying that I'm cured of this mass, but yet we haven't seen the radiologist report. So a couple of days later, I get the radiologist report, and he doesn't mention that there was ever a mass there. So I'm thinking that I'm all cured and everything, and I posted out that everything's fine. I get all the praises that God has done a work in my life, which I truly believe He has. I go to the doctor today, the surgeon, the thoracic surgeon that I had the surgery done from, and he looks at it and he says, "Not only is your mass gone, but I don't see any evidence of any scar tissue." So I'm on the road to recovery. All I have to do now is, he said, about 6 to 8 weeks from now, my ribs ought to be pretty well starting to fuse back together, and I'll be back to normal. They gave me some guidelines on how I should eat and drink and all this business, and hopefully that'll keep me from ever getting the bronchitis again. So that's been a rough 3 or 4 months in my life, and thanks to God I got through it.